In the northwest of England, in every village, every town, every city, there is a creature that stalks the water. She lurks concealed in algae-covered ponds, in reedy streams and rivers, waiting for unwary children to pass by. Should they stray too close to the water's edge, she seizes them in her long, green, slimy arms and drags them down into her domain. Many have dismissed Jenny Greenteeth as a mere nursery bogie, an invention of Victorian mothers and nannies designed solely to keep children away from the water. But what if I told you that much of what we think we know about Jenny Greenteeth is wrong? What if she wasn't just a scary pond hag invented to frighten Victorian children, but something far older, far more frightening, the latest fearsome face of a legend that dates back over 1,000 years. A legend older than England itself. Hi everybody, and welcome back to Beasts of the Old World, a channel all about ancient folklore and mythical creatures from across the globe. I'm Nick, and today we're looking at one of my favourite mythical creatures, something that my granddad used to tell me stories about when I was a boy, the terrifying Jenny Greenteeth. I've known about Jenny basically my entire life, but I've learned a good deal more putting this episode together, and I'm sure you will too. As always, dropping a like and a comment on the video is enormously helpful, and if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and set notifications so that you catch new uploads when they happen. And with that said, let's get into it. For the folklore enthusiast, often the first port of call is Catherine Briggs's Dictionary of Fairies, an often excellent treasure trove of all manner of mythical creatures from all over the world, but particularly those from within British and European tradition. Indeed, Briggs is often held up as the authority on all things folklore, with her work frequently touted as the gold standard. Yet her entry covering Jenny Greenteeth is very disappointing. In fact, it's so short that I can share it with you in full.
There are many nursery bogies invented by mothers and nurses to inculcate good behaviour or to keep children from danger. A good many of these last are designed to keep children from rivers and ponds. The Lancashire version of these is Jenny Greenteeth, who is supposed to seize children in her long green fangs and drag them down into stagnant pools at the river's edge. Her counterpart in the River Tees is Peg Powler.
That's it, that's all she wrote, but Briggs sells Jenny short. And because so many take their cues from Briggs, we all have an incomplete picture of Jenny Greenteeth. Now, as a proud Lancashire lad, I simply cannot let this stand. For one thing, there's plenty of evidence that Jenny wasn't just a story for children. Her notoriety was such that adults would also avoid anywhere associated with her, and at one point, you might be hard-pressed to find a place that wasn't linked to old Jenny. Her myth, even to this day, is still primarily associated with ponds, especially those covered in Lemna minor, or lesser duckweed, which itself is referred to in some places as Jenny Greenteeth. But as the country became increasingly urbanised in the Industrial Revolution, Jenny crept out of the stagnant ponds and waterways of the countryside and into the canals, the marl pits, and the sewers and drains of the city. All of a sudden, she could be anywhere. In Liverpool, Jenny even loosed her traditional watery bonds and began haunting Sefton Park and, curiously, St James's Cemetery. Children were warned not to wander near because she was said to lurk in the vaults there, where she'd devour any hapless people she chanced to come upon. In Burnley, she haunted an abandoned pit shaft, appearing once every full moon. And in Preston she was even said to fly above Lady Well on a broomstick. Far beyond a mere nursery bogie, these are the signs of a spirit whose reach extended well beyond the imagination of children, one with the charisma to take root in communities, to guard dangerous places, and to strike fear into grown men and women. And sometimes Jenny took on more domestic roles too. In East Lancashire, mothers warned children that if they didn't keep their teeth clean, Jenny would drag them into her ponds, sort of like a gruesome inversion of the Tooth Fairy. I say all this to demonstrate how, at one point in the not-too-distant past, Jenny Greenteeth was known in every corner of the Northwest. Indeed, I'm living proof that people still talk about her today, because Jenny Greenteeth is one of the creatures I grew up with myself, one with whom I was particularly well acquainted. It was my grandfather who used to tell me stories about mythical creatures. He's one of the major reasons I'm doing this today. We would often go out to a place called Cotton Hall, where there are some playing fields where we could play football and also take the dog for a walk. In those days, Cotton Hall was bordered by shallow drainage ditches where, at certain points, the water flowed into these small circular tunnels that were covered with iron bars. Today, most of these ditches are inaccessible, though I did go back recently and managed to find one. The iron bars, my granddad told me, were the doors to Jimmy Greenteeth's lair, and if you got too close, well, that would be the end of you. I would nervously peer in from a distance, convinced I could see a hint of a pair of evil eyes glinting in the darkness, or the faintest trace of a smile full of razor-sharp teeth. Now, apart from the gender swap, my granddad's Jimmy Greenteeth was in every way the same as Jenny, so when I first found out about her a few years later, I already knew what she looked like. Sickly green, frog-like skin, slimy and warty, half rotten from countless years spent lurking in the water. I knew she had long, skinny, grasping arms and fingers for grabbing her victims, and that despite her emaciated look, her grip was hard and cold as iron. I knew she had wide, pale, bulbous eyes for seeing in the dark, and that her hair was thin and dark and long and lank, always clinging to her cursed, skeletal body. For me, the horror wasn't that I would be caught and eaten, it's that I would be held captive by Jimmy Greenteeth in the water forever, and would never be allowed to escape. Now, it turns out that the Jimmy Greenteeth my granddad warned me about is a part of a much larger tradition, one that stretches back over 1,000 years. Because Jenny Greenteeth, as we've just seen, is not just Jenny. She belongs to a whole family of water monsters that appear all across the folklore of northern England, from Pegpowler of the River Tees to the Grindylow of Yorkshire. And if we trace the name back far enough, we find something even more remarkable. The Grindylow was once called Grendith or Greenteeth. The link to Greenteeth here is obvious, but even more interestingly, if we follow this word back through the ages, it connects us directly to Grendel, the legendary monster of Beowulf, the great Anglo-Saxon poem written more than 1,000 years ago. Briefly, for those who don't know, Beowulf is the oldest surviving poem in the English language, copied down around the year 1000 CE, but drawn from stories that were ancient even then. In its verses, we meet Grendel, a demonic, murderous monster who prowls through the night, looking for people to tear to bits. The poem describes Grendel as a descendant of the biblical murderer Cain, who was said to have slept with Adam's first wife, Lilith, who subsequently gave birth to a host of demons. More about that in an upcoming episode about nightmares. The link will be in the description once that's up. The point for now is that Grendel, owing to his cursed lineage, was doomed to wander alone in the wild, shunned by the world of men. By day he would hide in the marshes and fens, and the deep, reedy waters of the mere. By night he would strike, dragging warriors from the safety of their halls and homes, and slaughtering them in the dark. Grendel is not alone. Worse still is Grendel's mother, who dwells in the depths of a lake haunted by other creatures called Nicors, water monsters that lurk in rivers and bogs. The thematic overlap here is striking. Jenny Greenteeth waits in the still ponds of Lancashire, concealed beneath mats of duckweed, while Grendel waits in his stagnant mere. Jenny reaches up with long, slimy arms to seize the unwary and drag them beneath the surface. Grendel does the same, dragging his victims back to his watery lair. Both embody the terror of water that looks calm but hides sudden death beneath. So when we talk about Jenny as a nursery bogie, we're doing her a disservice. She isn't an isolated invention of Victorian England. She was already ancient, long before England itself was first forged. The chain runs from Grendel in the Anglo-Saxon imagination, through the Grindylows that haunted ancient northern waters, to the Greenteeths and the Greenteeths, and finally Jenny Greenteeth herself, all bound together in their names, their deeds, and in their habitats. 1,000 years of continuity, preserved in a single monstrous archetype. It shouldn't be a surprise to learn then that Jenny is not an isolated English oddity. She's just one expression of a much wider fear we all share. Almost every culture has its version of the lurking water demon. I've already mentioned the Nicors, relatives of the Swedish Nack and the German Nix. In the Slavic tradition we find the Rusalka, a pale, drowned maiden who drags men down beneath the reeds. In Japan we have the Kappa, while in Jamaica it's the River Mummer. And Australia has her own swamp-dwelling horror known as the Bunyip. And there are many further examples. All of them haunt liminal spaces, the threshold between the land and the water, and all of them remind us that water, though life-giving, can just as easily take life away. This is why Jenny has survived when so many other so-called nursery bogies have faded. She isn't simply a ghost story for children. She embodies a very real danger. In the olden days of England, drowning was one of the leading causes of accidental death. Coroner reports show that between 1558 and 1560, nearly half of all accidental deaths were drownings. People who couldn't swim might still rely daily on ponds and rivers for food or for work. For these people, water was a force that needed to be respected. If you fell in and couldn't swim, well, that could be it. Your clothing would weigh you down like chains, and your friends weren't jumping in to save you, because the chances are they couldn't swim either. Thankfully, drownings today are far less common, and yet Jenny's story lives on, no doubt helped along by her iconic imagery, as well as by her striking and memorable name. But I can't help but feel there's more to her longevity than this, a deeper reason that she retains her relevance. It strikes me that Jenny Greenteeth is more than just a ghost of old ponds. She's a reminder that appearances can be deceiving. The duckweed that shares her name still creeps across stagnant ponds all around the country, closing over them like a green lid. From the outside, it looks firm, solid, even inviting. But it hides the reedy, treacherous water beneath. Step onto it, and you're already in her grip. She'll drag you under, and the duckweed will close over you, leaving no trace of what's befallen you. While today we might not rely upon ponds and rivers for survival, and while most of us would probably survive an accidental dip in a pond, the same danger lurks for us today in different forms. Our online lives, for example, seem filled with friendly faces and harmless entertainment, but are really seeded with manipulation. Scams disguised as opportunities, strangers hiding behind false names, echo chambers and rabbit holes that quietly pull us deeper until we're utterly submerged. By the time we realise we need to come up for air, it's already too late. This is why Jenny Greenteeth endures. She's not just a tale of the past or a mere relic of Victorian ponds. She's the survival of an archetype, a monster older than England itself, an ancient, universal warning that just because something seems safe doesn't mean it is so. For often, it's in the illusion of safety that the most fiendish of predators are camouflaged. And they're always hunting. They're always hungry.